Forest Gemini John Iron Mane and Iver Starther raid walkthrough. Hello everyone, it's me again. Today, I'm bringing you a walkthrough to fight against the third boss in Root of Corrosion, Forest Gemini John Iron Mane and Iver Starther. As a unique dual boss raid in Tarisland, it brings intricate mechanics and an added challenge. Without further ado, let's dive right in and learn about the specific dungeon clearing tips that cover team formation, dungeon characteristics, boss mechanics, and more. Team formation. The following configuration and recommendations are based on elite difficulty. 2 healers, 2 tanks, 6 DPS. Elite difficulty requirements: equipment level greater than or equal to 97, hit greater than or equal to 315. Specific class assignments: healers, Divine Grace Priest, mandatory, high healing, damage reduction buff, plus soul healing Phantom Necro. Alternative class: Harmony Bard. Tanks: Frozen Barbarian Fighter, mandatory, team buffs, plus Guarding Paladin. Alternative class: War Shield Warrior. DPS: Flame Mage, mandatory, high burst damage, plus Wrathful Warrior plus Cunning Shadow Swordsman, mandatory, plus Thunder Barbarian Fighter, mandatory, team buffs, plus Solo Bard plus Hunting Ranger. Recommended ultimate: universal for all classes, Flash, Displace, plus Interruption, mandatory. Tanks: Single Target Taunt, AoE Taunt. DPS: Healing Reduction. Healers: Resurrection. Dungeon characteristics. Once the battle begins, if it exceeds 5 minutes, John Iron Mane and Iver Starther will go berserk. When the Forest Gemini are alive, they gain a special buff, requiring you to split your forces into 2 separate teams for effective damage output. Dungeon walkthrough. Upon entering the dungeon, you'll face the Phase 1 boss. In this phase, John Iron Mane will cast the following skill combo in sequence against players: Ground Smite, then Sweep, then Rage Fuel. Iver Starther will cast the following skill combo in sequence against players: Energy Shock, then Meteor Fall, then Summon Hurricane, then Outrage. In Phase 2, John Iron Mane will cast the following skill combo in sequence against players: Sweep, then Fearing Roar, then Swoop, then Blade Dance. Iver Starther will cast the following skill combo in sequence against players: Eagle Swoop, then Meteor Strike, then Summon Hurricane, then Outrage. Special Mechanic 1. Forest Gemini gain the following Gemini buffs. Energy Resonance. It is triggered when the 2 bosses are too close, greatly reducing the damage they take. The 2 tanks must ensure they maintain an adequate distance between the bosses to avoid triggering this effect. Twin Blessing. When one of the bosses is near death and its HP falls more than 5% below the other, this boss will become invulnerable for 10 seconds. If the HP gap remains after this invulnerability ends, the near-death boss instantly restores the HP to match the other boss. This buff can be triggered an unlimited number of times, so it's crucial to distribute the DPS evenly before engaging the bosses to prevent triggering the buff due to massive differences in team damage output. Wild Awakening. When Forest Gemini's HP drops below 75%, they will enter Phase 2 and transform into the Giant Wolf and Giant Eagle forms, gaining an attack boost and new skills. If their HP falls below 35% in Phase 2, they'll revert back to their human state. If both of them are in Phase 2, they maintain their forms until the challenge ends. In this case, it's essential to manage their HP carefully, ensuring they shift back to Phase 1 without triggering Twin Blessing, which significantly reduces the difficulty of defeating them. Phantom Shock. Forest Gemini absorb energy from the battlefield and form phantom beasts, performing 3 consecutive strikes, with a 3-sec cast and a 2-sec interval between each strike. If both of them are in Phase 2, Phantom Shock will be triggered automatically. Skill Analysis. John Iron Mane's Phase 1. Ground Smite. 2-sec cast. Deals damage to multiple rectangular-shaped areas ahead. Sweep. 2-sec cast. Deals damage to a fan-shaped area ahead. Rage Fuel. Targets a random player, dealing dot and applying Ignite for 15 seconds, after which it explodes, dealing damage to players other than the ignited player. The damage reduces with distance from the ignited target. The ignited player should distance themselves from the team, and return to the specified position after the skill expires. John Iron Mane's Phase 2. Sweep. Same as Phase 1, but with an expanded range. Simply retreat to the boss back to avoid taking damage. Ground Smite. Same as Phase 1. Rage Fuel. Same as Phase 1. Fearing Roar. Only available when transformed into the Giant Wolf, dealing damage to all players. Blade Dance. 3-sec cast. Only available when transformed into the Giant Wolf, deals massive damage to the surrounding area. Swoop. Only available when transformed into the Giant Wolf, charges towards the target after a 1.5-sec cast. If the caster is under Outrage, Applies sweep to the target and instantly casts swoop on another random player again. Special skill, Meteor Blast. Available in both Phase 1 and Phase 2. Detonates the meteors in the field after a 3.5 sec cast, dealing significant damage to players. This skill can be interrupted, so always be alert and ready to interrupt it. Failure to interrupt this skill will make it impossible to counter Ivar-Starther's subsequent air blast, leading to a devastating team wipeout. Ivar-Starther's Phase 1. Energy Shock. Performs a moonlight hit on all players after a 2-sec cast. Meteor Fall. Targets a random player, summoning a meteor to attack their location, every 1.5 seconds. Keep moving to evade and stay clear of other players. Summon Hurricane. After a 2-sec cast, summons Hurricane around a random player, pursuing the player and dealing AO damage. The targeted player must stay away from other players, and evade the hurricane that deals massive damage. Outrage. Enhances John Iron Mane after a 2.5 sec cast, increasing his attack and putting him in an outrage state. This skill can be interrupted. Please ensure the designated team for this boss encounter has an interruption skill ready to prevent John Iron Mane from being enhanced. Ivar-Starther's Phase 2. Eagle Swoop. Only available when transformed into the giant eagle. Hovers in the air for 3 seconds, charging towards a random player and dealing massive damage to the player and their surroundings. This damage can be shared. If the target is a tank, teammates for this boss encounter should gather immediately to share the damage. Healers should activate damage reduct promptly to prevent casualties. If a non-tank player is targeted, all players within the central circle should gather to share the damage. Meteor Strike. Only available when transformed into the giant eagle. Targets 3 random players and summons a meteor at their locations after 3 seconds, dealing damage to nearby players. Once the meteors fall to the field, a random meteor will explode after 3 seconds, dealing a 2-stage damage. Summon Hurricane. Same as Phase 1. Outrage. Same as Phase 1. Special skill, Air Blast. Only available when transformed into the giant eagle. Deals lethal damage to all players on the field after a 5-sec cast. Players need to hide behind the meteor to avoid this damage. To protect the meteor from being destroyed, make sure to interrupt John Iron Mane's Meteor Blast. After defeating Forest Gemini, you've successfully cleared the dungeon. Battle Focus. Players need to engage this boss battle with separate teams simultaneously. Please refer to the picture below for team positioning. Each team should consist of 1 tank, 3 DPS, and 1 healer. The 2 tanks should pull their bosses to the left and right sides of the map respectively, ensuring a safe distance to prevent triggering the damage reduct buff. Meanwhile, the DPS and healers should stand in the center to deal damage and provide assistance. When Ivar-Starther casts Meteor Strike, the targeted players should guide the meteors to land in the designated positions as shown in the picture below, thus effectively avoiding air blast damage and preventing a team wipeout. Throughout the raid, positioning isn't overly critical as it's more of a positional boss fight. However, balancing your team's damage output is essential in order to maintain consistent damage dealt to each boss. Choose your teammates wisely before entering the dungeon. Although the boss doesn't have any special damage skills aimed at tanks, having a tank dedicated to each boss limits the flexibility in swapping tanks for aggro management. Therefore, healers must stay vigilant and focus on the tank's HP. When facing skills that require distancing or damage sharing, they should react promptly, either pulling away or gathering the team in time, avoiding excessive damage output that could lead to a team crisis. That concludes the walkthrough for this raid. Best wishes to all adventurers for successful loot runs, and please continue to follow us for more walkthrough analysis from Tarisland.